I never thought my life would unravel this way. Through years of struggle, poverty, bankruptcy, illness, we had fought side by side, my wife Emily and I. We had built something out of nothing. There were nights we went to bed hungry, days we juggled bills like they were pieces in a twisted game of survival. But we had made it through. Together. That's why when I walked into the kitchen that evening and saw the test on the table, my heart didn't just sink, it shattered. An HIV test. The air in the room thickened. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. My hands trembled as I picked up the paper, my eyes scanning the words I already understood but couldn't accept. Positive. My pulse roared in my ears. I turned, calling out. Emily. She appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She had just come back from work, her hair still neatly styled, her makeup fresh. How could she look so composed when my entire world had just stopped? She glanced at the test in my hands. And then, without hesitation, she said it. It's not yours. A strange calmness settled over me. It was the kind of quiet that comes just before a storm. I placed the paper back down with deliberate slowness, forcing myself to breathe. Say that again, I murmured. Emily's jaw tightened. I made a mistake. A mistake. The words echoed in my skull, hollow and meaningless. I didn't ask. I didn't press. I just waited. She swallowed hard, then straightened her shoulders, as if bracing herself for impact. It was my boss. It happened once. There was no remorse in her voice. No tears. No apologies. A quiet rage coiled inside me, burning, twisting. The love I had for this woman, the same woman I had built a life with, suffered with, turned into something else entirely. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't ask for details, because I didn't need them. I simply turned away, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, but it did nothing to extinguish the fire inside me. She thought this was over. She thought I would cry, mourn, beg. She was wrong. If she had destroyed our marriage with a single betrayal, I would burn the ashes into something she would never forget. This wasn't heartbreak. This was war. I drove with no destination in mind, my grip white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The anger wasn't just sitting in my chest, it was pulsing through me, filling every inch of my body with something dark, something relentless. I had given this woman everything. Every ounce of my strength, my loyalty, my time. And she hadn't just betrayed me, she had infected our marriage with something that couldn't be undone. The worst part? She hadn't begged for forgiveness. She hadn't even flinched. I pulled into an empty parking lot and turned off the engine, staring into the void of the night. My mind replayed the moment over and over. The way she stood there, her arms crossed, as if she were annoyed by my reaction. As if she expected me to be reasonable about this. She thought I'd walk away, maybe cry, maybe drink myself into a stupor and let her continue living her life like nothing happened. Not a chance. Revenge wasn't just an option, it was the only option. I didn't need to gather evidence. I didn't need to check her phone or follow her around. The proof had been sitting on the kitchen table, clear as day. No hesitation. No second chances. She had destroyed me. Now it was my turn. Step 1, wreck her reputation. Emily had built her entire career on the image of being an ambitious, put-together woman. Her boss, the same man she had thrown our marriage away for, had been grooming her for a senior position in their company. A position that required discretion, respect, and trust. Trust. The irony nearly made me laugh. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the one I needed, Derek Holloway, an old friend who worked in IT security. The kind of guy who could access anything, given the right motivation. I tapped the call button. He picked up on the second ring. Logan? Long time, man. I need a favor. My voice was calm. Too calm. And I need it fast. He hesitated for only a second. What's going on? I need access to emails, messages, anything you can get me from a corporate server. Can you do it? Another pause. Then, a low whistle. That's some heavy stuff, man. You sure about this? I stared out at the empty lot, my fingers tightening around the phone. Absolutely. Derek sighed. I'll see what I can do. Step 2, make her regret it. I didn't want Emily back. I didn't want her apologies. I wanted her to feel it. To understand, for the first time in her life, what it was like to lose everything. I drove back home hours later, my heart steady, my rage crystallized into something sharper than before. When I walked through the door, she was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in front of her. She looked up at me with a neutral expression, one that infuriated me even more. You're back, she said simply. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Yeah. Thinking things through. A flicker of relief crossed her face, and it took everything in me not to laugh. She actually thought I might forgive her. She pushed the wine glass aside and folded her hands on the table. I know you're angry, but... I held up a hand, stopping her. Save it. Her lips pressed together. So what now? Now, I set fire to everything. I gave her the smallest, coldest smile. Now, Emily, we move forward. And she had no idea just how brutal that was going to be. Emily thought she had won. That much was clear in the way she sat there, trying to mask her relief with a neutral expression. She actually believed I was going to move forward, that I was some wounded, pitiful husband who would eventually accept what she had done and try to rebuild our marriage. She had no idea what was coming. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her closely. Her fingers tapped against the table, her impatience barely concealed. So, she said, finally breaking the quiet. Are we going to talk about this? I tilted my head, pretending to think about it. Talk about what? She exhaled, irritated. Logan, don't do this. I told you what happened. I was honest with you. Honest. That word nearly made me laugh. I pushed off the doorway and walked past her, heading toward the fridge. I grabbed a beer, twisted the cap off, and took a slow sip before turning back around. You think honesty absolves you? I asked. You think just because you admitted it, that changes anything? She lifted her chin. I didn't have to tell you. There it was. The arrogance. The entitlement. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was proud. Something inside me snapped into place. No more hesitation. No more waiting. It was time to begin. Step 1, destroy her at work. Derek came through faster than I expected. At exactly 7 a.m. the next morning, I woke up to an email with attachments. Hundreds of emails and messages between Emily and her boss, Michael Turner. It was worse than I thought. This wasn't just some one-time mistake. This was an ongoing affair. Explicit messages. Secret meetings. Even a hotel reservation booked on company money. I scrolled through the evidence, my jaw tightening with every new discovery. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had risked everything. And she was about to lose it all. I compiled the most damning pieces, the financial records, the emails discussing company matters in bed, the HR violating exchanges, and packaged them neatly into a single, anonymous email. I addressed it to Turner's boss, the company's HR department, and the board of directors. Then, with one single click, I sent it. By noon, the chaos had begun. Emily was at work when she called me, her voice shaking. Logan, something's going on. People are acting weird around me. I suppressed a smile. Weird how? I don't know, she snapped. Michael isn't answering my messages, and HR just sent me an urgent meeting request. I leaned back in my chair. That's strange. Wonder what it's about. There was a long pause. Then, in a quieter voice, you wouldn't. I let her sit with the thought. Let her wonder. Good luck with your meeting, I said, then hung up. Step 2, let her world crumble. By 5 p.m., Emily came home looking like she had just walked through hell. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She dropped her purse on the counter and stared at me. What did you do? I took another sip of my beer, feigning innocence. What are you talking about? Her hands clenched into fists. Someone sent HR everything. The emails. The money trail. They put Michael on administrative leave, Logan. I raised an eyebrow. Sound serious. Don't play games with me, she shrieked. Did you do this? I let the silence stretch, watching her chest rise and fall with panicked breaths. Then, I smiled. And that's when she knew. She knew. For the first time since this started, fear flickered in her eyes. You have no idea what you've started, she whispered. Oh, Emily, I said softly, stepping closer. This is just the beginning. Emily stood there, trembling, her breath uneven. The confidence she had the night before, the arrogance, was gone. In its place was something new. Panic. Good. She had no idea what it was like to feel helpless, to have the world crumble beneath her feet. But she was starting to understand. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice quieter now. I tilted my head. Want? You already ruined my job, she spat. What more do you want? I took a step forward, watching as she instinctively stepped back. She was afraid of me. She should be. I'm not even close to finished, I said calmly. Emily's lips parted slightly. She wanted to argue, to fight back, but the uncertainty in her eyes told me she wasn't sure if she still had the upper hand. She didn't. She lost that the moment she brought another man into our marriage. Step 3, take her money. I didn't just want Emily to suffer. I wanted her destitute. Over the years, I had been the one managing our finances. She had her own income, sure, but I handled the mortgage, the savings, the investments. She had never been good with money. And now? Now, I was going to make sure she had nothing. While she was at work, drowning in chaos, I visited the bank. We had a joint savings account, one that I had funded. Emily had access, but she rarely checked the balance. She just assumed money would always be there. By the time she got home that evening, I had drained it. Every last dollar. Logan, she said, her voice tight, where's the money? I sipped my beer and shrugged. What money? Her nostrils flared. Don't play dumb. Our savings. It's gone. I smirked. No, Emily. My savings is gone. She blinked, the reality settling in. You took it. I leaned back against the counter. You weren't going to need it. She was shaking now. How could you? How could I? I snapped, stepping toward her. How could you? You threw our marriage away for a cheap affair, and now you think you're still entitled to what I built. She looked away, her jaw tightening. I chuckled, shaking my head. It's funny, really. You spent years relying on me. And now? Now, you'll see what it's like to be alone. For the first time, I saw something new in her expression. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. She was starting to realize just how deep this would go. Step 4, take her home. The next morning, I called a realtor. The house, my house, was in my name. Emily had always been too lazy to deal with the paperwork, too comfortable letting me handle the responsibility. Her mistake. By noon, the listing was live. By evening, I had an offer. And by the time Emily walked through the door, exhausted from another hellish day at work, I was waiting for her with a single sheet of paper. "What's this?" she asked cautiously. I smiled. "Your eviction notice." She paled. "No. You wouldn't." "I already did," I said simply. Her hands shook as she read the paper. I let the moment sink in. Let her feel the weight of it. "You have 2 weeks to get out," I continued. "After that, I'll have you removed." She looked up at me, her eyes wide, desperate. For the first time since this began, I saw it, regret. But it was too late for that. She made her choice. Now, she'd live with it. Step 5, make her beg. The days passed in a blur of destruction. Her job. Gone. The company fired her for misconduct. Her money. Gone. She had nothing left but her own salary, and even that wasn't going to last. Her home. About to be gone. I watched as the life she had built, the life I had given her, crumbled piece by piece. And then, on the last night before she had to leave, it happened. She broke. I was in the living room, sipping a drink, when she walked in. Her eyes were red, her face hollow. She fell to her knees in front of me. "Logan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Please." I stared down at her. "Please what?" She swallowed hard. "Please, stop." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Why?" I asked. "Why should I stop?" Her lips trembled. "Because she choked on her words, struggling to say them. "Because I made a mistake." I tilted my head. And tears streamed down her face now. "And I'm sorry." A part of me had waited for this moment. Waited to see her kneel, to hear her beg. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. Just emptiness. I let the silence stretch, watching her crumble. Then, finally, I spoke. Too late. I stood up, stepping past her, leaving her there, on her knees, in the ruins of the life she destroyed. And I never looked back. Emily stayed on her knees long after I walked away. I could hear her quiet sobs, the sound of a woman who finally understood that there was no coming back from this. But I felt nothing. No pity. No remorse. She had made her bed. Now she would lie in it, alone. The next morning, she was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just an empty closet and a silent house. Step 6, the final blow. I should have been satisfied. I had taken everything from her, her job, her reputation, her home. But there was still one thing left. Her new life with Michael Turner. It didn't take much. A well-placed message to his wife, a carefully selected file forwarded to his board of directors. By the end of the week, Turner was divorced, jobless, and drowning in scandal. Emily had thrown away our marriage for him. And now? She had nothing. The endgame. Weeks passed. I moved on, rebuilt. The rage, the pain, they faded. Then, one night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Emily, I lost everything. Are you happy?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then, I typed back. You didn't lose everything, Emily. You threw it away." And with that, I blocked her number. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And some people, they don't deserve a second chance. Weeks turned into months. Life moved forward, but every now and then, I'd catch myself expecting to hear her voice in the house. Old habits die hard, I guess. But I never reached out. And she never tried again after that last text. Until one evening, months later. I was at a bar downtown, just finishing a drink, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Logan. I turned. Emily. She looked different, thinner, tired, like life had taken a bat to her ribs and never let up. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced with something more modest. Her confidence. Shattered. For a moment, I just stared. Then, I turned back to my drink. What do you want? She hesitated, then took a seat across from me. I just wanted to talk, she said, voice small. I let the silence stretch. Then, I chuckled. You wanted to talk. Now. Her fingers twisted together. I know I don't deserve it, but I held up a hand. Stop. She did. I leaned in slightly, my voice low. You don't get to sit here and pretend that what you did was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is backing into a mailbox. What you did? I shook my head. That was a choice. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. For the first time, I saw real regret. Not panic. Not arrogance. Just a woman who had destroyed herself. But it didn't change a thing. I tossed some cash on the bar, stood up, and looked down at her one last time. You wanted to talk. I said. Here's my final word, I hope it was worth it. Then I walked away. And this time, I never looked back. I walked out of that bar without hesitation, without regret. Emily was nothing to me now. But as I stepped into the cold night air, something gnawed at me, not sadness, not guilt, just finality. This was the woman I had once built a life with, suffered with, celebrated with. And now? She was just another stranger. I kept walking. She didn't follow. The ghost of what we were. I didn't think about Emily again until a few weeks later, when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Lisa, an old friend of ours from when things were good. We spotted each other at a coffee shop, and after some small talk, she finally asked, Have you heard about Emily? I sighed, already knowing where this was going. What about her? Lisa hesitated. She's not doing great. I raised an eyebrow. And? She lost everything, Logan. The job, the house, even Michael. Word is, he left her once the scandal hit too close to home. I sipped my coffee. Not my problem. Lisa searched my face. You really feel nothing for her? I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. She made her bed. Lisa exhaled. I guess I just thought that I'd forgive her. I let out a short laugh. You don't come back from what she did, Lisa. Some people learn. Some people don't. And Emily? I shook my head. She doesn't get another chance. Lisa nodded slowly, as if she finally understood. And that was the last time we spoke about her. The last goodbye. Months later, I was leaving my office late when I spotted someone sitting on a bench near the parking lot. Even from a distance, I recognized her. Emily. She was thinner now, her expensive jewelry gone, her clothes worn. She looked up as I walked past, her eyes tired, her face pale. Logan. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I stopped. For a second, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything between us, the love, the betrayal, the destruction, hung in the air. Then, she swallowed. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I studied her, waiting for the usual arrogance, the usual excuses. But they didn't come. She meant it. And for the first time, I realized, she wasn't trying to get something from me. She wasn't asking for help, for forgiveness, for another chance. She just needed me to hear it. I nodded once. I know. Then, I turned and walked away. No bitterness. No anger. Just peace. Because some doors, they're meant to stay closed. Months had passed. My life had moved forward. Emily was nothing more than a closed chapter. Or so I thought. One evening, I was in my apartment, sorting through some old files when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. Logan. The voice on the other end was weak, barely audible. Emily. I exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of my nose. What do you want? There was silence, then a shaky breath. She hesitated. I need to see you. I let out a dry laugh. Not happening. Please, she whispered. It's important. I should have hung up. I should have ignored it. But something in her voice was different. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. The meeting. We met at a small diner outside of town, a place where no one would recognize us. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. Her hair was dull, her skin paler than I'd ever seen. The confident woman who had once torn our marriage apart was gone. I slid into the booth across from her. Make this quick. She took a shaky sip of water. I'm leaving town. I leaned back. Good for you. She ignored my sarcasm. I needed to see you before I go. I waited. She swallowed. You destroyed me, Logan. I scoffed. You destroyed yourself. She winced but nodded. Yeah. I did. I studied her face, searching for the game, the manipulation. But there was nothing. No excuses. No arrogance. Just a broken woman who had finally come to terms with what she had done. I just wanted to say, she hesitated, then finally looked me in the eye. I never really understood what I had until it was gone. For the first time, I believed her. But that didn't change anything. I nodded, standing up. Take care, Emily. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched me walk away. And this time, it really was the last time. Emily was finally out of my life. For good. Or so I thought. One evening, after a long day at work, I pulled into my apartment complex, ready to unwind. But as I stepped out of my car, a voice stopped me cold. Logan. I turned. Michael Turner. The man my wife had thrown our marriage away for. He stood near the parking lot, hands in his pockets, his face lined with stress. He didn't look like the powerful executive he once was. His tailored suits were gone, replaced with something off the rack. His usual arrogance. Gone. I smirked. Didn't expect to see you crawling out of your hole. He let out a bitter laugh. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. I folded my arms. What do you want, Turner? He stepped closer. I know it was you who sent those emails. I didn't deny it. He chuckled, shaking his head. You ruined me, man. My career, my marriage, my reputation. I shrugged. Guess we're even then. But he wasn't done. I ran into Emily before she left town, he said, studying my face. She told me everything. I arched a brow. And? He smiled slightly. She said you were the coldest man she'd ever met. I chuckled. That's rich, coming from her. Turner's expression darkened. She told me what you did. How you stripped her of everything, made her suffer. I gotta say, he nodded, almost impressed. You're ruthless. I said nothing. Turner let out a sigh. Look, I didn't come here to fight. I just wanted to say, you got what you wanted. Emily's gone. I lost everything. But so did you. I clenched my jaw. No. I walked away clean. Did you? He asked, tilting his head. Tell me, Logan, what do you have left? You burned everything down, but did you ever stop to ask yourself, what now? I felt my pulse quicken. I hated that he had a point. Turner smiled, sensing the hesitation. You wanted revenge, and you got it. But now? You're just a guy standing in a parking lot with nothing left to fight for. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. And you're just a washed-up executive whose biggest accomplishment was sleeping with another man's wife. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. After a long silence, he sighed. Take care of yourself, Logan. And then he walked away. I stood there for a long time, watching him disappear into the night. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had won. But what do you do after the war is over? Revenge had been my fuel. My reason to wake up, to push forward, to destroy. But now? It was over. Emily was gone. Turner was nothing. Everything I had set out to do, I had done. And yet, as I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the walls, I felt something unexpected. Emptiness. Not regret. Not guilt. Just a void. The weight of winning. I had spent so much time focused on taking her down that I had never stopped to think about what came next. For years, my life had been about my marriage, my home, my plans for a future that no longer existed. Now, there was nothing left tying me to the past. I should have felt free. Instead, I just felt untethered. Like a soldier returning from war with no battle left to fight. A different kind of closure. A few days later, I found myself driving. No destination, just movement. I ended up at a familiar place, a small park Emily and I used to visit in the early days, before life got hard, before she became someone else. I sat on a bench, watching the world go by. People laughed, kids played, couples walked hand in hand. Life went on. And I realized something. I had spent all this time punishing her, but I had never given myself permission to move on. I had let her betrayal define me. Let it consume me. But I was done with that now. For the first time in a long time, I took a deep breath, a real one. And I let go. The final chapter. That night, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I made a list. Not of destruction. Not of revenge. But of the future. New places to visit. New goals to chase. New memories to make. Emily had been my past. But my life? That was mine again. And this time, I wasn't looking back.